Tēvu radio. In this conversation about parental leave in Latvia, societal and corporate norms, and communication with your partner. You're listening to Tēvu radio. My name is Gatis Midrovskis. I'm a father of 2 daughters and a father group lead. And with the help of Tēvu radio, I'm trying to understand how a modern father could raise happy people while maintaining his own sanity, good health, and relationships. Today, I'm having a conversation with Conley, an excellent communicator, former English teacher turned into media, communications, and marketing expert. Worked plenty at MTG Group and Inspired Media Agency, and now as regional marketing manager at HTT Pool. A person it is hard to forget. Empathetic and charming. Sounds like a dream with a Scottish accent. A marketing expert and a dad of 2 who knows a thing or two about parental leave. And this is the main reason why I wanted to talk with you, Robin, today. Hi.
Hey, thanks for the very nice introduction. I feel like I need to live up to some high standards now.
No, I bet people gonna hear why the introduction was so. In the beginning, maybe you could tell us a bit about your family, about your kids. How old are they? What do they like to do?
Cool, yeah, I have 2 children. They're quite young. I have a boy and a girl. So the boy is called Kurt. He's the oldest. He's 8 years old. He's going into 3rd grade tomorrow, because we're shooting this August 31st. So tomorrow he's starting the 3rd grade in Maropa's gymnasium. He likes to play football. He plays for Maropa's sports centers. And he likes video games as well. But he's a lot of fun. He's a really cool kid, really nice guy. And I think he's a bit like, personality-wise, he's a bit like how I was as a child. In the sense he's maybe a bit too nice. Because this is something my mum used to say about me when I was a kid, that I was like too nice, that I didn't understand the concept of being mean. Or I couldn't get it when people were mean. I couldn't get it when people were mean to me. I just didn't get this concept of being dishonest. And I can see that with my boy. He's a kind of similar. He looks more like his mum, but he's got a bit like my personality, I think. And then my daughter, she's kind of like the opposite. I have a daughter, Emma. She's 5 years old. And she looks a bit like me, but she's got her mum's personality. She's kind of like her mum on steroids in some respects. She's like the boss, the ultimate boss of the house. Very like strong and assertive, and very cool as well. She's kind of like a girly girl, which is funny. Because her mum, Liana, or I call her Liana, I'm not pronouncing her name, but she's kind of like, don't pronounce my name correctly anymore. She's like, so Liana's not the girliest girl, but for some reason our daughter is. She likes Barbies and doing her hair and having, like the children's version of makeup, which she likes to do. I'm not sure where she's getting it from. She super likes pink, but she's really happy with it. So yeah, she's super cool, and and I'm married to a Latvian, Liana. She's working in TVNet. She's the head of sales in TVNet, and you know Liana. So
yeah,
used to work with her, I believe.
Yeah. We worked together, and she was my boss.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, if you worked in advertising, and probably you worked with my wife at some point.
Yeah.
In Latvia.
That's a small circle, and. That was actually very interesting to see, to know her personality a bit, and to combine it with yours, and you, I guess you both are really high functioning people, high performance people with great careers, and how it resolves in the family, I guess. It really strikes me a real interest, and the passion how you talk about your kids. It's really great, and how you could see these things. I don't know, blossoming from your children. seeing some traits from yourself, seeing some traits from Liana. Were you always this empathetic, or was this kind of developed in recent years?
I think I've always been pretty empathetic. I think that was something I got as a child. I got that sort of feedback from teachers and other people. People used to say, oh, he's very mature for his age. I'm not sure if I was mature for my age. I think I was just kind of a quite empathic, sensitive person. Very much. I've always been like a people person, and I can pick up on people's emotions quite quickly. Which is sort of, I don't know, that's probably a good thing. I think that it's neither good nor
nowadays
bad.
It's a good thing.
Nowadays it's a pretty good thing. We'll go for that. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think I've always been that type of person. And it's kind of funny. I think this is kind of like a random thing, but I remember I lived in different countries growing up. So I'm originally from Scotland, and throughout the 90s, I lived in Hong Kong because my dad had a job there. I was there during the handover from UK to China period, and then we lived in Australia. And I remember when I moved to Australia, I went to the school in Sydney, and there was this girl who took a liking to me, and she was kind of a crazy, kind of hippie type girl, and she wanted to know my star sign. I'm not a believer in star signs or anything like that, but she wanted to know, and then she did this like study, and she's like, I can tell that even though you're a guy, you have like quite sort of motherly personality traits. And even at that time, I was like 15 at the time. I was like, I guess I kind of do. I kind of like something about it kind of rung that I guess I'm sort of one of those people that kind of cares how people are feeling within the group and want people to feel sort of good and want people to feel that they're sort of feeling valued within the group. I've never been that kind of jock guy who's being like super macho or masculine. Never been that type, even though that kind of side of personality is still there, particularly having fun with the guys and stuff.
How was it growing up, being a guy like you, not being the classical, I don't know, stereotypical guy?
It was totally fine, and I think a bit of a game changer for me was when I was like, I think I was like 10 or 11. So I'm like 37 years old now. So sort of the 90s were sort of my period for like music and culture, and I discovered this band that everyone knows called Nirvana, and I became like totally obsessed with this band, particularly Kurt Cobain. You might have noticed my son's called Kurt as well. Yeah. And as a sort of personality, I found him quite interesting because he had this sort of anti-jock attitude, and that he kind of like said it was like it's fine to sort of be kind of like sensitive to things and to feel empathic towards people. And he was standing up for women's rights and standing up for gay rights. And I found that quite an inspiring attitude to have. And that sort of cultural aspect of, that period was a bit of a game changer for me, because then it sort of gave me an outlet of how I could define myself as a personality. I didn't feel the need to pretend to be like a macho guy from that side. But at the same time, being a British person, I really love football. I'm a big fan of Glasgow Rangers, and I'm still growing up. I was still super into doing sports and that side as well.
So that's great that that Kurt is doing football also.
Yeah, that's absolutely I was a big encourager for doing football, and it's kind of like it was quite a great thing for me growing up. It gave a lot of confidence. I was pretty good at football as a kid. I was always in school football teams and representing like teams at a bit of a higher level. So this was like and it was kind of a cool thing as well to bond with him and to teach him something. And, I think it's kind of a cool thing as well to be part of the team. I think being in a sports team is a really great thing for kids.
Mm-hmm.
That, you have that bonding, you have that sort of winning and losing, have to deal with it, dealing with pressure as well. Even though for kids, I think sometimes it's quite difficult when they go into the tournaments and, they're like 7 or 8 years old, and the coach is like, really, again, very passionate about things, about how they should be playing. And because he's quite a shy person, he kind of takes it quite difficult sometimes. But that's part of, life lessons. You need to deal with that type of pressure in life. So sports is a good arena for developing and training in this aspect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about the main thing that I really wanted to talk about with you, about parental leave for men. That's a new thing. As we talked 3 years ago when my daughter was born, I didn't really know that it's actually possible for guys to take a parental leave. I thought it was just a mother thing. So you took parental leave with Emma.
Yep, that's right. I took it with my second child. I didn't take it with Kurt. Partly it wasn't really discussed, but also there was a financial element with it at the time because I had just changed job and I went to quite a high paid job, and because of the way the money was calculated, it kind of seemed like I would lose quite a significant amount of money if I went on the parental leave. And
but you were thinking about it also then. It was kind of in the back of your head.
It was kind of in the back of my head, but I wasn't really sort of actively discussing it. Parental leave was in my head because I had joined MTG, Modern Times Group, which is a Swedish company. It's no longer in the Baltics, but it's still existing in Sweden. It's just the company's changed somewhat. And parental leave is super common in Sweden. So a lot of the guys who I knew from that office, because I used to travel to Stockholm once or twice a month, a lot of my teammates are Swedish and a lot of my direct colleagues were going on parental leave. So it already become normalized to a certain extent. And it already seemed like kind of a thing where, guys from different backgrounds, and in MTG it was managers, guys who were very self-confident and successful, who just had this attitude of, well, yeah, of course I'm going to go on parental leave. That's what you're supposed to do. That was just for them, it was a normal thing to do. For me at that time, it was still kind of a new concept, but just seeing the confidence that these guys had of, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to do it, and I'll be a dad, and my wife will go back to work and she will do her thing, and that's just the way it should be. And then it started to go in my head of well, actually, that is kind of a cool thing. But I think there's still I think I can imagine for Latvian guys, there's still somewhat of a barrier of even just talking about the idea of
there's
going on.
There's plenty of stigma, yeah.
Yeah, even if you want, because probably jumping across timelines, but when I went on parental leave with Emma, not just the 2 weeks, but I took a year off in total. And a lot of guys at that time were coming up to me and saying I wish I could do that. That seems like a really great thing to do. And when I asked them well, why don't you? Why did because a couple of them already had kids on the way. And there was a bit of awkwardness of they just didn't know how to bring up that discussion, because they were saying well, my wife's mine, she's taken off a year and a half, and that's kind of that's it. Mm-hmm. She's already kind of planned everything out, and the man's voice somewhat had been put in the background. It wasn't it's kind of an awkward thing, when you've had this culture of women taking the parental leave for such a long time. It's kind of a awkward thing to
it's hard
stand
to break
up
it.
And say hey, maybe we share this year and a half, and just sort of, I don't know, maybe it's hard to test the water to see how your girlfriend or wife will react. But in the case with my wife, she's a worker. She likes to work. Mm-hmm. She enjoys working. For her, working is even somewhat relaxing. Even that she did an article with Mans Mazais, and the article was about a working mum. And I think one of the kind of key sentences they took out was how she was answering emails 2 hours after the birth of Emma, which I can confirm is true, because actually Emma was pretty chilled after she was born.
Yeah.
And she just slept and just like a natural thing for the aunt to do. It's just like check what's going on, answer, make sure things are kind of cool, and that was kind of, I think, quite a therapeutic thing for her to do. And she said with Emma, she was like, I'm only planning to take 6 months off. Do you want to take like the rest of my time, or we would find like a babysitter? It's kind of like, she was kind of like throwing the ball in my court in that sense of like, what do you want to do with this? Like, if you want to, like, go for it, you can take the rest of the parental leave. And at that time, everything was kind of, the stars were sort of aligned in terms of circumstances. I'd been sort of, the income thing was not an issue. And at that time, and still now, Leanna's actually earning more than me, even though we both have like good jobs and we're both kind of doing pretty well. She's doing particularly well, so there was no sort of issue in that sense. It wouldn't be an issue anyway, I think, because we're both, we're pretty comfortable from the financial point of view. So then the option came up, and then I'd been kind of normalized to the idea of taking parental leave, and it kind of seemed like, why not just do it? Yeah, this seems like a really great thing to do. Why should we, get some babysitter in when we can have somebody from the own family? And it felt important as well. It felt like, I'm doing something responsible for the family. I could sort of lie and say that me doing this allowed my wife to go back and pursue her career, but she would have done it anyway, so that wouldn't have made a difference. But it did feel like a really sort of responsible, and I would even say kind of manly thing to do, to take that sort of step to say like, yeah, I'm going to be fully responsible for this little kid, and I'll do everything from A to Z during the daytime. And so yeah, that's how it came up with Emma. It was really sort of my wife throwing the ball in my court. And I was working in Inspired at the time, media agency, and of course they were very supportive of the idea. There was no issue whatsoever, because they're even supporting the father's project, so it would have been kind of weird if they started making a fuss about this. But yeah, we had plenty of notice, because we made the decision to do that while Liana was still pregnant with Emma, so it was like way in advance. I kind of said, look, I'm going to go off on paternity leave, and we've got like several months to sort things out and cover and do everything. So it was that was pretty straightforward. In terms of reactions as well, the reactions were, when I told people in general, the reactions were kind of mixed, but mostly very positive. Most guys, as I said, were like, I wish I could do that. That sounds like a really great thing. It's not very common in Latvia, so like, it's interesting. Why are you doing this? There was a couple of guys who kind of like sort of joked a bit about, that's not a very macho thing to do. That's like kind of a girly thing to do. But like, as I talked to them at that particular time, I was working in a media agency. My biggest client was L'Oreal. So I was like, dude, I spend like 8 hours a day talking about makeup and shampoo and cosmetics, and going over like strategies of how to sell this to young women. So it's not really a step down in terms of like the mask. This was actually like, it wasn't like I was going from being a lumberjack to changing nappies. It was going from talking about cosmetics to to changing nappies. So it actually felt a bit more sort of like you're more hands-on and doing something for the family.
No, that sounds really good. Actually, you're blowing through all my questions I have prepared for you. So you already know what to answer, and yeah, one of them was how did Leon respond to this? So that's a very important talk, I guess, to have. And actually, until now, most of the guys that I've talked to, the response is very similar. That the main push comes actually from the wife.
Yeah.
If not, then most of them don't think about it. But in your case, at least, you had this experience seeing other Swedish, let's say, guys, and in management and all sorts of positions. So yeah, you've had a great experience in building blocks building to it. So you're going on a parental leave and paternity leave, as you said, and when Emma was 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty small kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Not easy to manage if I don't know, if you haven't done the previous 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
But with Kurt, you were working all the time, right?
So Kurt, I did the 2 weeks, and then I was working, pretty much all the time. And yeah, it wasn't super easy because at that particular time I was doing a lot of traveling, and before Kurt was born, traveling for the job was like pretty like a nice thing to do. And you had your own space and you're seeing different cities. And then after Kurt was born, it became a little bit more difficult because I felt a bit guilty that everything was put on my wife's shoulders. Particularly, like I remember, I have this memory of when he was about 2 or 3 months. I went to Ghana for about a week and a half for work, and it was like February or March or something like that. So it was kind of dark outside. The weather wasn't great. My wife was stuck inside. We were living in a flat at the time in the center, and Kurt wasn't very well, and she was dealing everything on her own. So it was very challenging for her. You're by yourself taking care of the small kid. It's your first kid, so having your first kid is, as you know, it's more challenging. You're learning all you're doing essentially you're doing all your training with your first kid, and you're learning as you go. So I don't think it was very easy for Liana, and I want to say it wasn't very easy for me. I felt guilty about it, but it was much more difficult for her, of course. So with Kurt, I was working pretty much the whole time, but then there was a kind of a nice period where an MTG, like, they had a restructuring, and my job didn't exist anymore at one point. But I was lucky that I got offered a new job like pretty much straight away, and I had like 2 or 3 months. I think it was like a couple of months between when I ended in MTG and when the starting date was in the new company. And that was even better because it was in summertime. So I spent this, like, when Kurt was, I don't know if he was 2 or maybe just before, I think he was like 1.5 or something. So I had this period of like 2.5 months or something like that of just like me and Kurt, which was really cool because at that time he was already kind of past his baby stage. He was a toddler. We were going out, we were going to the park and the beach and doing our own stuff, and he's talking a little bit. So that was kind of a nice period to be just the two of us with Kurt when he was that age. It's different, of course, when you go on paternity leave and the baby's still 6 months old, because there's not much in the way of conversation in that sense.
I wanted to ask you, how about, I don't know, the feeling of loneliness? Because it seems like you like people, and you're it seems like you're an extrovert. I've heard that many moms and also now dads, they experience this kind of loneliness, that the whole day you're home, not alone, but still you cannot have a real conversation with a person the whole day for several months.
Yeah. I don't know. It kind of felt okay because the days went by super fast. It was kind of that thing where you were doing so much in terms of like making food, getting the kid to sleep, going out for long walks with the pram, going out shopping, all the kind of logistics. And then it was always that feeling like, the evening came and you were like, what did I do today? This like day has just gone by so quickly. I kind of not even sure what I've done. It's just everything's gone by so quickly. So I don't know. I don't remember any feelings of loneliness. Maybe there were at some point, but in general, no. I think I just got on with it and just decided. I had like still people phoning me up and wanting to talk, particularly from the office that I was working in at the time. So like talking to people was still like happening. People wanted to chat to me about different things, and then conversations went on, and it was kind of easy to do that when taking the kid out for a walk and she would be sleeping, and then I would be on at the phone at the same time, and particularly if I had headphones. So yeah, I think I didn't feel much issue with loneliness, and also because of the way logistics worked out with us. So our kid was still being fed with breast milk at that time for a while, like partly at least. And so I live in Maropa in a house, and at the time my wife was working in Draugium, which had an office very close by. So we had this logistical thing where my wife was still like pumping milk into a bottle when she was at the office, and then we would like walk up to the Draugium office, pick up our package, and then go back home or go back wherever else. So we're still interacting with my wife during the daytimes as well. So everything kind of went by super fast. There was no major dramas with going on paternity leave. It was everything was kind of smooth. It was the second kid, which I think made a big difference, because I think with the first kid, you're kind of learning your lessons and everything's kind of new, and it's a big game changer from your lifestyle as well. You've gone from being, your kind of single life, not where you're obviously you might be married or whatever, but your childless life where you have freedom and you kind of know what you're doing. You're good at your job. You know how to socialize. You know which restaurants you like. And then you have this new person in your life, and then it's a big sort of like negotiation of how do we deal with this? What do we do? You're kind of like learning things for the first time, and you don't really have to deal with that when it's the second kid, because you've already gone through those lessons, and it's feeling a bit more confident as a parent. I think it would have been more difficult if I took paternity leave with the first kid.
Yeah,
but still would have been a valuable thing to do, of course.
Meaning of valuable things. How do you rate your relationships with Emma and Kurt? How do you think did it impact your relationships with your kids?
Yeah, I think it definitely strengthened, and like it was good bonding with the kids. I'm quite hands-on with the kids in general, and so I'm very active with them. Even though I wasn't taking the leave with Kurt, he still sort of saw me as somebody who was very much like somebody who was very like participating in his activities and bonding with him. But actually, yeah, now that you say that, now I think about it, even taking the paternity leave with Emma was good for bonding with Kurt too, because I was the one who was going to pick him up from kindergarten, and we actually maybe even this was unconscious social thing to do, is we used to kind of hang out at kindergarten quite a bit, because Emma quite liked the kindergarten atmosphere, so sometimes we would just kind of go early and hang out outside where the kids are playing, and she liked to participate, and the kids were kind of cool with her, and Kurt was there, and I would sometimes play football with the kids too. And then when we go home as well, we're kind of lucky that we have a house with a garden, and we have a nice sort of community of neighbors around us, and all the kids are playing together and participating with that too. So I think in general, yeah, being off with them, you definitely bond with them much easier, and you build that trust with them. I still think mum is like number one. It's kind of hard to replace mums. I think, probably that whole pregnancy thing where they're carrying around a baby and growing it inside their body gives them the slight edge when it comes to bonding with their kids. But it's still important to have, an active father in a child's life, which I think even there's like some study that some guy did about like the importance of even, IQ levels can be impacted by how active a father is in a child's life. That
Do you want to know?
Tell me, yes, please, because I only kind of read the headline and I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting thing, but I haven't jumped into it.
If we're talking about involved fathers like you, then these kids, they do have better IQs. They have better career choices. They don't make as much bad choices, like significant bad choices. So they also the percentage of people with involved fathers is 4 times less in prisons. So also drug abuse, alcohol, and everything like this. A father gives a really good foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're very knowledgeable or not, really empathetic or not. Just being there for them is at least half the victory.
Yeah.
So, and also it impacts your life as a man. The studies show that it improves the health of men. We stop smoking, drinking. We start thinking about exercise, even if we're not doing it. At least we're thinking about it. And someday, I really hope someday I will also go to the gym. Finally, I got a gym membership, and then COVID.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
all the lockdowns and everything.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I really hope that this is going to change. Also, the studies show that our careers and financial situation actually improves.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good point to make, because I think probably some people, and this probably comes out with mothers quite a lot as well, is this kind of, how's taking time out going to impact your career? Is it going to sort of have a damage on your like ability to climb up the ladder or maintain your job or income levels? But it's not really had much impact on myself or Liana in terms of job prospects. I think like if you've got, it's only 1 year out of your sort of career. Yeah. If you think about it, you're going to be working pretty much 50 years of your life. You're going to be working, so there's plenty of time to like jump on the career thing. 1 year out, it's not going to make a huge difference, I don't think, anyway. I haven't seen it, and in fact, a lot of employers actually really value parents because they're great multitaskers and very efficient as well. They have a set amount of time to get things done, and there's no real messing around. They'll get things done much more effectively. That's in general the feedback that I've heard, and I think there's some amount of truth to it as well. I think there's this added motivation when you're a parent.
Yeah, that's true. That's also some things I've seen. So how was going for a year being at house? Did you learn something new about taking care of the household? I don't know, cooking, or were you the kind of guy who's already into these things before kids?
Yeah, I was already cooking and taking care of the washing and I think my wife and I aim to have a pretty equal relationship in general, in terms of like what we do for the housework, and we're both working full time, and I still think she is a bit more responsible than I am. She's a bit more like the financial manager, but I think a lot of that comes from our personality types, where she's much more like, we need to do this now and this is super important, and I'm maybe a bit too chilled out sometimes. I'm a very relaxed person. She's much sharper than I am, I think in some respects. I think she's smarter than I am, but she had this thing recently where I don't know where it came from. She was talking with her friends about IQs or something like that, and IQs within relationships, and she wanted us to both do an IQ test to see who had the highest IQ. And she thought I would have the highest IQ. I thought she would, and it turns out we're kind of similar, although I have a slightly higher one. But I think in terms of personality types, she's a bit more like I think she's sort of sharper and sharper than I am, and a bit more decisive. I think that's the word I'm looking for. That she's like, let's do this, and this is the right decision. Where I'm kind of Mr. Chill. I think we balance our personalities probably quite a lot in that respect, because she's quite a strong woman, and so there isn't really sort of a major clash there, because I'm quite kind of cool with like going with the flow, and sort of reacting and to the environment and making everyone feel kind of good and happy.
But it's actually really good that you both know yourselves, and that helps you to balance each one out, right? If you just would, I don't know, see from the perspective of I don't know, the culture or societal norms, then you have to be like this macho man, let's say, and it doesn't work out. You're just not the kind of person, because you're talking, and I have to remember how it is with me and my wife. It's exactly the same. She's also the smarter one, the sharper one. She could do all the planning. I'm not the planner. But when it comes to I don't know, relationships and with the kids, I bet I would have the higher EQ, like the emotional IQ.
Yeah.
So we also balance each one out, and it's very good that we both kind of at least starting to learn about ourselves.
Yeah, it's good to have self-awareness, absolutely, and it's good to sort of, I think, even learn about, just because I think traditional gender roles can still play a part in that as well. And one kind of nice lesson I took by chance, I was reading this magazine, Wired magazine, years ago. And there was this interview with this guy who was the founder. Do you know SurveyMonkey, the tool? There was this guy who founded SurveyMonkey. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name. And even more unfortunately, he died a few years ago. He was, well, when he was alive, he was married to Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook. So she's like a super high-powered person. And she even wrote a book called Lean In, encouraging women to sort of not take a step back when they became mothers, but to just sort of lean into the job and still, be very participatory in careers. And he took time out he kind of took the role as sort of like kind of more stay-at-home parent, even though he was founding a hugely successful survey company at the same time. So he was kind of like playing a big role at home with the kids. She famously would I think she had this famous thing where she was working during the daytime at Facebook. She would come home to have dinner with the kids, and then would go back to work kind of late at night at home as well. And he was saying that one lesson that really helped him, because they were having a lot of conflict when it came to how things were done around the house. So he would take care of cleaning the clothes. And then he would iron them and fold them up or whatever he was doing. And she would come home and tell him that he's doing it all wrong. Mm-hmm. It needs to be done this way, and he's not doing it correctly. And that would lead to some kind of conflict in the the relationship. And then he was taught by some psychologist or whoever that this is kind of an important thing for mothers to have. They have this nesting.
Yeah.
This really deep sort of feeling, a nesting intuition that they have to sort of be the ones that kind of make sure that the home for the kids is in a certain way. And that helped him accept that she wasn't doing this to be kind of offensive to him or to criticize his homemaking skills, but it was just that she had this kind of this need as a mum to have a certain influence over how the household should be. So then it helped him learn to accept that he's not doing this terrible job of house chores or things for the kids. It's just there's a biological reason behind this. And for me, taking that lesson as well, reading this was really helpful because my wife has she has a strong opinion about how things should be, and that helped me accept that there's just you have to pick your battles in certain respects, that sometimes you have to let a mum be a mum. Mm-hmm. And there's no real, you don't have to even if you're staying at home with the kids, you don't have to try and pretend to be a mum. You still you can still be a dad who just happens to be on paternity leave and taking that responsibility of looking after the kids. And Yeah, and I think that's, I would strongly encourage other fathers to do the same. I think, society is changing. I think I heard from a previous podcast that there's something like 10-ish% of guys are taking up paternity
In
leave.
Latvia, actually, like 6%.
6%. Which, and if you look down into the numbers, that maybe doesn't make quite sense, because I was looking the other day about other things to do with Latvia, and I saw that within the EU, we have quite a high percentage of female managers in business. It's like 45% of managers are female, which is a really great statistic.
Yeah.
And but then, as a knock-on effect, that should mean that a lot of those female managers are having double roles in their life, where they're full-time managers and full-time mums, because the percentages don't match. If only 6% of the guys are taking that paternity leave, that kind of indicates a huge burden is falling onto women's shoulders, which men should be able to pick up, and the opportunity is there to do that. You've spoken before that in Latvia is the possibility is there for you to share the paternity leave. Latvia has a very generous paternity leave system compared to other countries. There's like a year and a half you can take up to. Some countries you don't get much at all. If you're in the United States, you might not even get any, depending on where you work as well, because it's all based on the company.
Mm-hmm.
So we really are in a perfect position to make that balance in society and do some good. So I'd certainly encourage guys to step up. I know I don't want to like sort of tell people like you must do this and preach, because every family's different and every gender role is different within the relationships. But society's moving on, and
at least think about it.
Yeah, at least
and talk about it.
Talk about it.
Spouse.
See what the situation is and how you can get the most out of it. And at the end of the day, if you're a dad or a mum, the most important thing is your family. And that was another thing I took from when I worked in MTG. I had actually a boss who was, for a short time, I had this boss who was American. He was a very kind of old school radio guy. I think he was from Chicago originally. He was a really cool guy. He was coming to sort of the end of his career, so he was in his like mid-60s at the time, and he took over the department I was working with. And he was like, guys, just to start, like, to get us off on the right foot, I just want to say, like, the number one rule I have for my teams is family first. Whatever decision you take in your life or your work, if you're changing job or whatever, the number one thing you should ask yourself is, like, does this put my family first? What kind of impact is this having on my family? Because, you can screw up your job, but you can get a new job. It's not hard to recover from making a mistake at your work. You can even recover friendships, but if you make a mistake with your family, or you're like knowingly doing something that might have a negative impact on your family, it's very difficult to recover from that. And now everyone's in a position, like new dads are in a position where they can, start the family life in a really balanced, healthy manner with, sharing the workload. And statistically, it seems like there should be a high percentage of couples where the woman is a high earner, managerial position, and there shouldn't be like a terrible financial impact by, sharing the paternity leave.
Mm-hmm. Sounds really good.
Sales pitch.
Yeah, and you know how to do them. And actually, I remember one thing that you also said. We are gonna work for about 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Taking 1 year, that's a lot. Taking like 9 months, at least 6 months for your family, for your kid in the beginning, putting in these foundations, good foundations. And it's the time that you cannot just get back.
Yeah.
You'll always have time for work.
Definitely, yeah.
I watched like old people, and also I've heard about people who on their deathbed ask, what would you like to do? Nobody says, I would like to work more.
Yeah.
And,
I wish I stayed late in the office more often.
Yeah. Most of them talk about relationships, and mostly about their families. I wish I would had a lot more time with my kids, getting to know them. Yeah, that's pretty impactful. Before my daughter was born, the first one, I stayed at home for the first 3.5 months, and I had this possibility that I was already thinking about it. Oh, I'm gonna be in these first months with them, getting to know her, and getting to know the ropes, how to take care of the baby and also the wife. And then there was a big chance that it's not gonna work. I'll have to go to work immediately, let's say. And I was devastated about the idea. Oh, well, I won't have this opportunity, this once in a lifetime, in her lifetime and also mine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really, really happy that everything worked out how it did. And yeah, that's at least I've thought about these impactful relationships that we're having. The kids, they won't remember them. You will.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they will remember. And if I think even like this is probably not going to sound very good, but the paternity leave wasn't probably the most memorable time in some respects, because you're kind of like, you have like your sort of routine stuff, because your kid is in a routine. You're sort of feeding and sleeping and burping and pooping and whatever else cleaning that you have to do. Because actually, this was one of the things that I remember, because I remember I was in the L'Oreal office when I was like saying bye to people, and some of the people who were parents were like, "This is going to be the best time of your life, and you'll remember this." So I had these like high expectations, and then I think a few months in, I was like, this isn't the best time of my life. And then we're like, I think it got to like, like November time where my son got ill, and then daughter got ill, and there was like bad sleep and taking care of like 2 ill children. So it wasn't always like super easy, but because time moved so quickly, it kind of was like, it was over in such a flash that you're like, it's not one of those times that I just think back and think, oh, I remember that was so good, because it just went by like such a puff. But it was more, I think it's a really great thing in the sense that you are being a really participatory parent. Like it's a real teamwork with, with your wife or your girlfriend or whatever. And I think you do learn a lot about yourself as well. I think, through, even though you're not like consciously saying like, I remember the specific time of paternity leave, I think you're still like taking in a lot of lessons. You've bonded with your kids, and I think being a parent as well teaches you a lot about yourself, even like your own sort of hang-ups as well that you have about your own personality, that when you're there with your kids so quite a lot and really learning them quite deeply, you kind of pick up on these things that teach you a little bit about yourself as well. And I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that my son is quite like how I was as a kid. And so my son, for example, is quite shy around some people. Not so much now, but particularly when he was a bit younger. And I remember I was like that too. I was like super shy as a kid. And when I was growing up, I always thought like, oh, if only my parents had like done this, I would have had more self-confidence. If only my dad did this thing, or whatever excuses I had in my head. And then when I saw how my son was and that I could see myself there, it was a bit like, it wasn't really like someone's fault that I was that way. That's like a genetics thing. It's like a personality. It's just like who I was. And it kind of, in some ways, helped me let go of some of the hang-ups I had from the past. Some of the sort of, issues I had internally about, you know, past, it kind of like going through that kind of early stage, being a dad kind of helped me just sort of like realize certain things about how I was as a personality, and just helped me sort of say like, well, this is kind of like, it wasn't really anyone's fault that I had these kind of like, you know, this total shyness as a kid, or that I reacted in certain ways in social situations. It's just, that was the way I was, and that's just like time to move on and just accept that as well. And so it was kind of it was quite transformative in some respects about, you know, dealing with myself as a personality,
accepting yourself a bit more, how you are,
accepting. I think, you know, when you accept your kids for who they are, it also helps you accept who you are for what you are. There's no sort of it builds up your self-awareness as well.
Before the ending questions, I have one thing. I now know that, at least for me, the hard moments, like when my kids are sick. Well, my oldest yesterday got sick, really, laryngitis, and that's hard. And also temper tantrums and all these unpleasant things. And I now know it's unpleasant for both of us, but I now know and have this capacity to understand that actually these moments, they bond us even more, help us understand who is who. And so maybe you have some distinctive hard moments that you remember. You told that, in November both your kids got sick, and it's not easy to handle that one. Maybe there's was that a really distinctive hard moment, or maybe something else?
Like a distinctive hard moment, I don't know. I think that was kind of tough, like from lack of sleep. I think the hardest moment I ever had, which was a very sort of short moment, was when my son started choking on something when he was a few months. I think he was like 6 or 7 months old, and he had like a piece of like vegetable or something like that, which he kind of bit down on, and it got stuck in his throat. And that was like a super frightening moment. And I remember we called, like my wife and I were both home at the time, and she called the ambulance, and they were kind of giving instructions about what to do to sort of, you know, when to sort of pat him in the back so the thing would shoot out, which like it did shoot out before the ambulance got here, which was like, it was a very short-lived moment, but it was easily like the worst moment of my life.
It's been like 8 years almost. You still remember it.
Oh yeah, it was horrible at the time, and like one of my former colleagues from Inspired, she's a grandmother, and she remembered she had a similar experience for a grandchild, and she was like, when she was reliving, it was very upsetting, and it is like that was the sort of traumatizing moment that I had. Like I think for about a few months after that, or even longer, whenever I heard a sort of weird sort of coughing sound, I just kind of was like sort of, you know, post-traumatic, you know, it's like a, you know, Vietnam flashback. I don't like, they call it Vietnam flashbacks in English because of like guys who went to Vietnam in the 70s to fight had these like reliving sort of terrible moments, and that was like the one moment that I had that really sort of like freaked me out for a while. But yeah, that was easily the worst one.
Okay. It's really, really, really great to talk to you about these kinds of topics, but we're both busy people. And at the end of the podcast, I ask all my guests 3 short questions. The first one, what's the last book that you read and you would like to recommend it?
Children's book or?
No.
The last book I read was actually Homo Sapiens. Have you read that one?
Yeah, excellent one.
Which is a really great one. I think that was quite an interesting one.
Did you read all the 3 parts of?
I'm reading Homo Deus now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's because I did Homo sapiens. Now started Homo Deus, and I think there's another one about like lessons from the 21st century.
Exactly. I guess it goes Sapiens, then 21 lessons for 21st century, and then Homo Deus.
Yeah.
They're still pretty good.
Yeah.
A good one.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. That was a good one. That was super interesting as well. Took some nice lessons out of that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you believe in aliens?
Yeah. I think there must be aliens. Like, I'm definitely sure there must be somewhere in the universe, given like the size of like the universe that we have. Whether they've come to Earth or not, I'm not 100% sure in that one. I know there's like a lot of stories about like UFO landing sites. I kind of want to believe that it would be kind of super cool if there was. But at the same time, I think with aliens, you know, would they survive in our atmosphere, for example? Like, you know, if there are aliens, they're probably like beings that we can't really imagine because they've evolved in a completely different world from what we've evolved from.
Okay, cool. And the third one, do you remember a gem from your father? This one is together with Virtes Selve, and it's called like Tava Perla, like something really distinctive. What you remember from your father, something that maybe he taught you.
Yeah, I think from like sort of business world, there's two things that I tend to sort of remember. One is look after those who are on their way up, because they'll look after you when you're on your way down. And that's like a lesson about, you know, treating everybody with respect, whether they're like junior or senior, because those people they're going to be relationships for life. And these taking care of relationships can have a long-term benefit. And another one which I quite like, and it suits my personality, is when you go into meetings, is that tell the truth, because it's much easier to remember afterwards. Because, you know, if you're like going into a meeting and you're saying half-truths or even lying a little bit, you can easily tie yourself in circles, and it makes life much easier if you just stick to the truth.
Yeah, that's true. And in the end, you can ask one question to me.
Okay. Question for you. Would you have another child? And if so, how would you treat the paternity leave, or what would you do differently?
I would spend as much time with them as I could. And yeah, we've talked with my wife. We're now having 2 kids, and we're thinking that the third one could be adopted. So,
wow.
So yeah, as I understand, you can also have a parental leave when you're adopting, either a small or a big kid.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
Yeah, until the age of 8, you still have these 1.5 years. So it's a good thing. And we'll see how it goes. My second daughter is 1 month old, so let's just wait just a little bit and then decide on the third one.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Robin, for your time. This was an amazing conversation with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Cheers.